Imagine this. It's 1982. You have a headache, so you reach for a bottle of Tylenol, America's most trusted painkiller. You take a capsule, just like millions of others do every single day. But within hours, you're gone. No warning. No visible sign of danger. This isn't a scene from a horror movie. This was the terrifying reality for 7 people in Chicago. A reality that triggered a nationwide panic and forever changed the way we look at the medicine in our own homes. This is the story of the Chicago Tylenol murders. In the fall of 1982, Tylenol, made by Johnson & Johnson, was a household name. It held a massive 37% of the painkiller market. It was the go-to remedy for everything from a minor headache to a common cold. People didn't just use it, they trusted it. That trust was shattered on the morning of September 29th. Our story begins in Elk Grove Village, a suburb of Chicago, with a 12-year-old girl named Mary Kellerman. She woke up with a sore throat and a runny nose. Her parents gave her 1 extra-strength Tylenol capsule. Minutes later, Mary collapsed on the bathroom floor. She was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead shortly after. Her death was initially attributed to a stroke, a tragic but seemingly natural event. But just hours later, the tragedy repeated itself. In nearby Arlington Heights, a 27-year-old postal worker named Adam Janus also died suddenly. He'd taken Tylenol for minor chest pains. His family, grieving and in shock, gathered at his home. His younger brother Stanley and Stanley's wife Teresa, both suffering from headaches from the stress of the sudden death, took Tylenol from the very same bottle. Within a day, Stanley was dead. Teresa died 2 days later. 3 members of the same family, gone in a flash. The initial responders were baffled. What could cause 3 healthy people from one family to die so suddenly? The pieces started to come together thanks to 2 sharp-minded firefighters, Philip Capitelli and Richard Keyworth. They were discussing the Janus family deaths and happened to mention the bottle of Tylenol on the kitchen counter. Another firefighter overheard them and mentioned the strange death of 12-year-old Mary Kellerman that same morning. She had also taken Tylenol. It was a long shot, a gut feeling, but they decided to make a call. That call would change everything. They contacted the medical examiner's office, and the dots began to connect. Another victim, 31-year-old Mary Reiner, had recently died after giving birth to her 4th child. She had taken Tylenol for postpartum pain. Then there was Paula Prince, a 35-year-old flight attendant found dead in her apartment. An open bottle of Tylenol was on her bathroom counter. And finally, Mary McFarland, a 31-year-old mother of 2, was found dead in her home. She, too, had taken Tylenol. 7 deaths. All sudden, all in the Chicago area. All linked by one common, seemingly harmless product, extra-strength Tylenol. Investigators quickly collected the bottles from the victims' homes. The test results were horrifying. The capsules didn't contain acetaminophen. They were laced with potassium cyanide, a highly toxic poison that can kill a person in minutes. The amount in a single capsule was more than enough to be fatal. The terrifying truth began to emerge. Someone was intentionally poisoning Tylenol, but how? Johnson & Johnson's factories were immediately investigated, but they found no contamination. The poison wasn't being added during manufacturing. The chilling realization was that the tampering was happening asterisk after asterisk. The bottles left the factory. Someone was buying the bottles, taking them home, carefully opening the capsules, replacing the harmless powder with deadly cyanide, and then returning the poisoned bottles to the shelves of local drugstores and supermarkets for unsuspecting customers to buy. The killer was turning a trusted remedy into a weapon. The news broke on September 30th, and absolute panic ensued. The public's trust in over-the-counter medicine was obliterated overnight. Police cars drove through Chicago neighborhoods, using loudspeakers to warn residents not to take Tylenol. People across the country ran to their medicine cabinets, dumping bottles of pills into the trash. The fear was palpable. Any bottle, in any home, could be a death sentence. Johnson & Johnson faced a corporate nightmare. Their flagship product was now associated with death and terror. Their chairman, James Burke, made a critical decision. He chose public safety over profit. In an unprecedented move, the company issued a massive recall of all Tylenol products from store shelves nationwide. That's over 31 million bottles, with a retail value of more than $100 million. They also offered to replace any Tylenol the public had already purchased, free of charge. It was a huge financial hit, but it was the right thing to do. They set up toll-free hotlines and communicated openly with the media and the public, setting a new standard for corporate crisis management. But while the recall stopped the immediate threat, a huge question remained. Who did this, and why? A massive investigation was launched, involving local police, the FBI, and the Food and Drug Administration. The entire country was on edge, waiting for an arrest. The killer had terrorized a nation without ever showing their face. Then a break in the case. Johnson & Johnson received a letter. It was an extortion letter, demanding $1 million to stop the killings. The letter was traced to a man named James William Lewis, who was living in New York City at the time. Lewis had a history of fraud and other crimes. A nationwide manhunt began, and Lewis and his wife were eventually captured in a New York City library. The police had their man, or did they? Lewis admitted to writing the extortion letter, claiming he only wanted to exploit the crisis to get money and embarrass his wife's former employer, but he fiercely denied being the poisoner. Investigators could link him to the extortion attempt, but they could never find any physical evidence tying him to the actual poisoned bottles. They couldn't place him in Chicago at the time of the poisonings. Without that crucial link, they couldn't charge him with murder. James Lewis was ultimately convicted of extortion and sentenced to 20 years in prison, of which he served 13. He maintained his innocence in the Tylenol murders until his death in 2023. So, if it wasn't Lewis, who was it? Over the years, several other suspects have been investigated, including a man who had threatened to poison products in the area. But no one has ever been charged with the 7 murders. The case remains one of America's most infamous unsolved mysteries. We still don't know who placed the poison on the shelves. We don't know how many stores were targeted. We don't know if the killer acted alone or had help. After the nationwide recall, the poisonings stopped as suddenly as they began. The killer simply vanished. While the person responsible was never brought to justice, the Tylenol murders left a lasting legacy that you can see in your medicine cabinet right now. Before 1982, pill bottles had simple screw-off caps. There was no way to know if they had been opened. In response to the crisis, the pharmaceutical industry, led by Johnson & Johnson, revolutionized product packaging. They introduced tamper-resistant packaging, what we now know as safety seals. That foil seal under the cap, the plastic band around the outside, the cotton ball stuffed inside, all of these measures were created to make it obvious if a product had been tampered with. Congress also passed new federal anti-tampering laws, making it a federal crime to tamper with consumer products. Johnson & Johnson's handling of the crisis is still taught as a textbook example of corporate responsibility. They put customers first, took a massive financial loss, and then innovated. They later reintroduced Tylenol, not in capsules, but in a solid caplet form that was much harder to tamper with, along with the new triple-sealed packaging. Incredibly, within a year, they had regained most of their market share. Their brand survived because they earned back the public's trust. The Chicago Tylenol murders were a crime that did more than just take 7 innocent lives. It exposed a vulnerability no one had ever considered. It forced an entire industry and a nation to change. Every time you open a sealed bottle of medicine, you are seeing the legacy of Mary Kellerman, Adam Janus, Stanley Janus, Teresa Janus, Mary Reiner, Paula Prince, and Mary McFarland. If you found this story as fascinating and chilling as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into cases that changed our world. See you next time.